Matt Gates. I just want to thank Administrator Gaynor and Director Moskowitz for coming and really giving so much attention to the great team that we've got here in Escambia County working to respond to this disaster. What we've seen is that each of these unique weather events has a unique set of challenges. And with a windstorm event, it is very apparent to see the damage that the community encounters and that we have to work our way through. With a water event, with a flooding event, like we've seen from Hurricane Sally, some of the impacts are not as easily apparent. And so we are asking our residents, our citizens, to document the damage that you have to ensure that we are able to get a full assessment and that we're able to have our entire team work together to meet the needs of the community. We also want to thank the many guardsmen and women who have been throughout Escambia, Santa Rosa counties working to ensure that our citizens are able to access ice and water and food. We've given out many MREs today. We were able to get additional supplies to several of those pods, and in cooperation with Mayor Robinson and with the state, we're looking to set up additional pods for those who are impacted by extended power outages. We received notice today from Gulf Power that they are actively working to restore power, and Tuesday has been identified as a day where we'll really see a lot of progress between now and then to ensure that we're as close to full power as we can get. And we're working now to ascertain what communities will see those extended absences of power so that we can deploy the meal resources and the water and ice resources to those places. The Escambia County team has been very effective at assessing damage. We're now working with FEMA to ensure that we get the adequate declarations that are accurate so that we're able to obtain the assistance with the federal government, the state, and our local government working in concert. Again, this has been remarkable to have the FEMA administrator here and Director Moskowitz here as well, and now I want to hand it over to Director Moskowitz for his report.
Congressman, thank you, and thank you for your assistance in this. Obviously, your commitment to the area is well known. I want to thank Administrator Gaynor for being here today. FEMA has been excellent to work with, not just on a day-to-day basis, obviously through COVID and everything, but also through the aftermath of Hurricane Sally. I want to thank the sheriff, the mayor, commissioners, and the delegation for being here. You know, this has been a complete team effort in response. The governor obviously signed a state of emergency and recently signed, obviously, the request to the president for a major declaration, which is pending on the president's desk and in process with FEMA at the moment. So we're hopeful that that'll be granted because we understand how important that is for local governments. I try to make people understand that in this day and age, it's not just this disaster, it's the aggregate of all the disasters. It's the previous disasters that Florida has happened in multiple areas, especially in the Panhandle, and not to mention all the money that has been spent fighting the pandemic. So the Division of Emergency Management, under the direction from the governor, acted very early. We pre-staged equipment in the area, so we were able to come in with generators and pumps pretty quickly. We had 7 swiftwater rescue teams ready to go. 600 rescues were done between Escambia, Santa Rosa, and Okaloosa. And I really want to thank our first responders, the police, fire, the swiftwater rescue. Some folks came from as far as Oklahoma and Tennessee. I want to thank all the charitable organizations that are out there, obviously, our charitable NGOs, our churches, the religious community that is really filling that gap and that need. Since then, we've opened up 7 pods here in Escambia County to do ice, water, MREs. Those will stay open so that we continue to fill that gap as we wait for power and the private sector to come back online. We are pushing Gulf Power, working with them as fast as possible, making them understand how important it is. Same thing with Verizon and the other utility companies. And so, the state is committed. As we get out of the response phase, we are continued to the recovery phase. Since I took over in January of 2019, we've reimbursed over $3 billion. So I can tell you, as soon as that money comes to us, we will get it back to this community as fast as possible. And I want to turn it over to Administrator Gaynor, who again has really been a real partner to the Panhandle. This is an area, not this area specifically, but the Panhandle is really one community, and they're still suffering from Michael. And the administrator has been a really great partner since those days. So I want to thank him for being here.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Congressman. So recoveries and responses work best when they're locally executed, state managed and federally supported. And behind me, you have a great team from the city to counties to the state, all the volunteer organizations. The way you get through these disasters is all working together. And I'm proud to be part of that team, along with the administration providing the governor with an emergency declaration to make sure that the state had everything it needed to provide emergency protective actions before and after the storm. That will continue. We're working on the request from the governor to the president for a major declaration. Again, we're working on that. And our goal is to get it as quickly approved as possible to make sure that we deliver those disaster resources to those impacted by Sally as quick as possible. Thank you.
Questions?
You said right now we haven't gotten the emergency declaration.
I was just on the phone with Chief of Staff Meadows at the White House, and there is no delay in the processing of that. It just takes a little bit more time when you don't have a windstorm event to assess the damage that individuals and businesses have encountered. But it is absolutely my expectation, after talking with the White House moments ago, that will be forthcoming, and then that will unlock, whether it's the individual assistance, the business assistance, those types of things that are in the toolbox pending the completion of that process. But I don't expect it to, drag on. I think we're going to see action this coming week.
Secretary Moskowitz, thank you for doing Brownsville and Wedgewood for us so quickly. I think that made a huge difference to the community. Is there any way we can get ice to the other distribution sites? We only have 2 that have ice, and those are the ones that you and Commissioner May were able to work out.
Yeah, ice is coming to all 7 locations, and we'll continue to backfill that ice. Obviously, you got to replenish ice much faster than you do the other resources. So, yeah, we're committed on the ice to the pods, and we're also going to discuss opening up some additional pods in some areas.
Yeah, because we're hearing that some of them are overwhelmed, particularly on the west side of town.
Yeah, no, we were out there. We saw that. So as soon as we saw that, we got on the phone and made sure that we were replenishing supplies as fast as they were leaving, but also bringing additional commodities to the area.
Thank you.
Rick, we're talking about bringing one on to Woodland Heights for dealing with some of that. The Pensacola Village, I know, doesn't have power, and I know there are some issues there. So in the meeting we just had, the director was very gracious to work with us, as he said, on new sites. I think Woodland Heights is going to be one of them, and looking to bring some tarps to that area as well.
We may have had some damage to local infrastructure due to the barges from a local contractor. Does the fact that it was not necessarily direct damage from the storm, does that affect in the funding or reimbursements, or is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, I hadn't heard about the barges. I'm just kidding. So the commitment from the governor is, that FDOT is going to work with the contractor, that the restoration of the bridge is going to move forward. As far as, how that will all get paid, whether that will be something that we seek reimbursement on, whether that will be insurance proceeds, whether that will wind up in litigation, that is all to obviously be determined. Obviously, when it comes to reimbursement, if there are other ways that money can be recouped, that we'll look at that, of course. But that is not going to impede the progress that needs to be made on the bridge.
Sheriff Morgan, we've heard, that several of the sites were overwhelmed today. Traffic was an issue. Could you give us a report on that?
That is correct. We had to respond to 2 sites, actually in the north part of the county. And what we're seeing, Rick, is an obvious frustration. We're past the 72 hours, and we ask everybody to be prepared for the first 72. And so our public, rightly expects us to be able to respond after that 3-day rule. And so it was a little bit of a delay getting from the state, getting the pod set up in some of the locations, et cetera. And to be quite honest with you, I think the National Guard got caught a little bit unawares. But we were there. The call for assistance came out and we responded. Order was quickly restored. We found in those situations, as long as it is orderly, meaning, get your barricades set up, get your cones out, get the people set up to do the distribution. As long as you give the impression of orderliness, so will the public. They will respond in kind. So I really wouldn't call it much of an issue. It was more of a blip on the radar that they got over. I don't think they were expecting that many people to show up that quickly, and that's really what they had to deal with.
Thank you.
Sheriff, since you're there, have you been able to access all corners of the community? Are there still any pockets that are inaccessible or areas y'all haven't been able?
We're everywhere, and again, while I'd like to take full credit for that, you know, we're working with the PPD, National Guard, all of our county partners from emergency management, you know, the Swift Boat Rescue folks, et cetera. But no, we've got all four corners covered at this time. We're doing a lot of calls for service now for health and welfare checks. I think people were calling in and saying, hey, I'm going to ride this thing out, I'm okay. Well, guess what, folks? With no power, your cell phone battery goes down. And so now we're getting calls from out of state, you know, could you go check on Joe, my brother, or, you know, whoever, my aunt, we haven't heard from them in a couple of days. These are the folks that got into the hurricane party mode. And we're going to ride this thing out and have a party. And as I jokingly said the other day, we're looking for some humor in this situation. They've sobered up and decided this wasn't such a good idea. And so now their family's worried about them. But that's working well, too. And again, we are confirming a possible carbon monoxide death from a generator, unfortunately. You know, as you know, our county administrator, Ms. Gilley's done day after day. You know, folks, you have to be careful with chainsaws, careful with your generators. The coroner hasn't confirmed that death yet, but we're pretty sure that that's what it is. But we've got the county covered with all of our state partners and city partners. You know, folks, we're looking good. You know, we're on our feet. You know, hopefully we get power restored here shortly, and that's the major first step forward.
Administrator Gaynor, thank you for coming to Escambia County.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. You spent some time today on the Pensacola Bay Bridge. Can you give us some of your observations of what you saw? Because we really haven't been able to see it because we're all landlocked.
Yeah, it's quite a serious situation, impact at a number of different locations. We looked at one location, I think on the Pensacola City side, but there's multiple locations where it was impacted by barges, roadways missing or disrupted in many different ways. I'm not an engineer, but it's going to take some time. I think Director Moss was alluding to months, so there's some serious work that has to happen. But it is a serious situation on that bridge.
I would add, Rick, that the DOT officials there shared that there is still settling that is going on with some of the spans and with some of the pilings. So it is impossible at the current moment to complete the assessment of the extent of that damage and how long the reconstruction effort will take until you get that settling complete.
Matt, you've traveled across the entire district. How would you, was Escambia County hit the hardest by this?
Yeah.
What you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen flooding on the backside of Gulf Breeze that was pretty significant. We saw some flooding in the low-lying areas in Destin. But here, the combination of the storm surge and the flooding created a backup that we didn't see as much to the east, because as the water built up, there was no outflow. And you got a little bit more of that into Choctawhatchee Bay than you got into Pensacola Bay.
Do you guys have a ballpark estimate of how many people have received help so far at those pods?
We won't have that until this evening.
And has there been any shortage of supplies, or has everybody who's been there been able to get what they needed?
So we actually did have a couple of pods that did run out, and that's why Director Moskowitz was mentioning to you that we have a convoy. Basically, the state is really here to help us to resupply. Some of them were replenished, but we do have more coming in to replenish all of them.
And what would your message be to people? You know, a lot of people are tired and frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
What would your message be to them at this time if they haven't been able to get the help they've needed?
Yeah, so one of the things that we continue to talk about each day during our briefings is, you know, it is difficult. There is fatigue setting in. We're going into a number of days, but courteousness and patience is always helpful. What we're trying to do is keep people off the roads, because that allows your service, your utilities, your law enforcement to help get everything restored. And I think once we get things, as many things as we can back to normal as possible, I think people will feel better. We're still going to have the damage. You're still going to see, you know, debris and things like that. But I think once you have your water and your power and then other things that you are common to see, you'll feel better. But please be safe, and please do not put your generators in an area that does not have clear ventilation. We did have fire rescue last night have to remove a generator from a multi-residence facility. It was dangerous. So thankfully it got resolved, but we just can't impress this upon you enough. Even the administrator said that he has continually seen that post-event fatalities tend to be substantial. So,
What's the name of that facility?
I'm not at liberty to say at this moment, but I'll be more than happy to get it to you.
Okay.
Sheriff Morgan, how has, I guess the curfews, how's that been working out, and have you guys had to issue any citations?
We've, curfew's working well. We just run the data today. We've had almost 100 contacts for people out and about that should not have been out and about. And again, I want to emphasize to the county, we're not on a lockdown. We've told our officers to be very reasonable in contact with citizens. You know, verify why you're outside in a courteous way. Are you going to work, from work? You know, ask some basic questions. Of course, very few people now that we've changed the time from midnight to 6 a.m. are going to be out, you know, at midnight going to work, if you will. Even those who are shift workers, I mean, they tend to be there before 12 o'clock. But yeah, it's significant. We found, and we get calls from citizens, you know, that there are groups of people wandering around in their neighborhood. And so we ran the numbers today. We've had 100 contacts since the curfew went in, and so it's working. I can tell you we get calls from citizens also thanking the officers for being out there. We've got people that their homes are damaged, they have no power, they can't leave. Because remember, when they left and evacuated, they didn't take their guns and their jewelry with them. That unfortunately was left in the homes. So you have people sleeping in homes without any power. Thank God the weather's changed. And again, they're vulnerable. They have no lights, you know, et cetera. And they've told us to hear law enforcement patrolling the area, you know, makes them feel real secure. And so we'll continue with that until we get power restored and there's some sort of semblance of normalcy comes back to our county. We've had no confrontations because of the curfew. It's a good thing.
Reports of looting?
Yes, we've had some looting on the west side. Gulf Breeze reported some looting 2 days ago. Again, it's minimal, like on the beaches, et cetera. I mean, we've got a heavy and massive patrol. Of course, that's a much more confined area out in Perdido Key. But, you know, you can't forget Mayfair, Montclair, Inslee, you know, and up in the north end of the county, you know, in the Canton-Molino area. You know, there's people up there that's homes are damaged too that they're not in. So we've got to make sure that we are consistent in our application of this throughout the county. Everybody pays for law enforcement protection and everybody gets law enforcement protection. Okay?
And those cases of looting, were they at people's homes?
Yes,
or
homes,
businesses?
homes.
Commissioner May.
Thank you all so much.
Commissioner May, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so we'll do one more question if you want.
Commissioner May, you were in Brownsville most of the day today. Can you kind of talk to us about what you saw at Brownsville and how the distribution went?
Well, first, let me just say, you know, a quick phone call to Congressman Gates made a big difference, and Director Moskowitz and FEMA has all been here today, Rick, and it's just been a great collaboration. And Matt, I'm very grateful for y'all being here. And we saw today a lot of people who were in need, who needed resources, got the resources that they needed. I've been at 3 sites today, Rick, and the lines are still coming. People are still needing ice, they're still needing water. And because of Matt and the state, we've been able to deliver those services.
You also, have you been to Forest Creek Apartments?
Yes.
What's going on there?
Well, there was a feeding out there earlier today. That unfortunately, that's a repetitive flooding situation that obviously, you know, there's been a great partnership with FEMA in addressing it. I think that the citizens there are hurting. I don't see the opportunity. It's not my district, but there's going to have to be a lot of more resources provided there to help the situation that's occurring out there, Rick.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pete. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Going on my phone.